All right, we're going to D'Amico Ryan's comfort zone in this edition of Sign or Decline. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you, Locker Room, Cody Stoots channel, Houston football, all of that. Cody about to head to Indianapolis for the Combine. We'll get into the draft a little later on, but right now it's time to continue Sign or Decline, and we go right to the linebackers. Patrick Queen. Should the Texans sign Patrick Queen? Anticipate him hitting the market? I do. The spot rack estimated value right now is steep. 18.5 million is the estimated annual value. 5 years, 92 mil. I know D'Amico loves linebackers. I don't know if he's going to love it that much, especially when you look at all the possibilities you can do in some of the names that we've had. But what is your initial estimates to the Patrick Queen question?
What a year can change. I mean, you think about where the Texans were a year ago. Think about where Patrick Queen was a year ago, a guy that was not going to have his fifth-year option picked up, a guy who many teams believed the Ravens were going to trade before the season got here. And I remember a year ago, Texans fans wanting Patrick Queen to be a target for the Texans. Ultimately, the Ravens hang on to him, and then he makes his first Pro Bowl. He was All-Pro, second-team All-Pro. And in fact, in Pro Football Writers of America, I just put him and Roquan Smith as the first team linebackers. I just said, all right, those guys were really good. Go ahead and throw them on there. They were the AFC Pro Football Writers of America first team guys for me as well. He's been really good, and he's hitting the market at an absolute perfect time. You talked about it. He's for sure going to hit the market. When you think about some of the holes that the Ravens have and some other free agents that they have coming up, and the money that you talked about would make him the third highest paid inside linebacker for average annual value. And if he's going to put together what he did last year for the Ravens, he's probably worth that money to somebody in the NFL.
We talk about D'Amico Ryan's falling in love with guys. We talked about, he's going to fall in love with someone in the trenches. I could see him falling in love with Patrick Queen at that price. It does seem a little bit steep, although, with how young this team is, he kind of brings a little bit of nasty. He's got the veteran leadership, and I think D'Amico will like him. Maybe the league is hesitant to give him this type of money. But what is your case for Patrick Queen? I think my case for is, and you just laid it out, if he can do what he did last year, continuing, and he can be kind of like one of the focal points and perhaps like the leader that D'Amico Ryans wants him to be. And, oh, by the way, he can work side by side with Christian Harris as Christian Harris continues to develop in year 3. I think that's the case for.
The case for is he's not the exact same guy, but this is D'Amico Ryans' Fred Warner if he makes this investment. This is the leader. This is the big-time linebacker. Queen's increased his ability to cover guys over the past couple of seasons. He's Mr. Consistency. He basically plays every game. He doesn't leave games. He doesn't get hurt. And he might just be scratching the surface on what he can bring to the table at the linebacker spot. So, yeah, it's expensive, but if you're starting to get an upper echelon type linebacker and you slap him into the middle of this Texans defense with Christian Harris, who's growing and increasing his abilities and turning into a better linebacker before our eyes, you start talking about a really fearsome linebacker duo. And when you think back to, even when Harbaugh was there with the 49ers, but certainly under D'Amico Ryans, they usually got two guys that you fear at that linebacker spot. You got the big time, top upper echelon elite guy like Warner. And the 49ers obviously had the other, he's really good too, in Dre Greenlaw when D'Amico Ryans was there coaching the defense. So this would be his Fred Warner. Again, Patrick Queen's not Fred Warner because there's only one of those guys, but the big investment, the hope that he turns into a top 5, top 10 linebacker. I mean, he's probably already a top 10, but he turns into and stays a top 5 linebacker. That's what you're betting on if you make this type of investment. I really like what Queen brings to the table from that standpoint.
I like him too. My case against, though, at that position, if you're given 5 years, $92 million, it just seems a little steep. Like for me, I would like for D'Amico to find a Fred Warner on day 2 of the draft or something like that. I also think that on the D-line, you can bring in some guys and free up. I like Cashman. I like Christian Harris. And with where they're drafting, it kind of feels like they're in a money spot where if they fall in love with one of these linebackers in the draft, like there's a chance that you're getting your top pick at that position in the draft, and he's going to be on a rookie deal. I like Queen, but if you're telling me I'm going to have to pay $18.5 million, I just think I can spend that money a little bit more wisely, and we can let DeMeco Ryans, whether it's the first, second, third round, whatever, whether he likes some of these linebackers on like the lower scale that we could get into a little later on. I would say that that's my case against, and I would say that before we get to the verdict, that's kind of the area that I'm leaning towards.
Well, and if you think back to DeMeco Ryans' defenses in San Francisco, and you don't always have this luxury, but look back to the defense, a lot of those guys are homegrown. A lot of those guys are drafted players that they took the years to develop, invested in them, are on their second, third contract with the team, and they sort of fill in some of those back spots with free agents or, steals or fines or trades and things like that. Not to say they don't go and make investments, because they certainly did. And there certainly were some expensive guys on there, but there's a lot of homegrown elements to the defense. The Texans maybe don't have that element or that opportunity right now because of some of the lack of draft picks and some of the misses in the draft over the past couple of seasons. So you do need to spend, but it's too expensive. If you had so many things figured out, like if there was only one or two starters on this team that you needed to go out and find a new starter at that position, maybe I'm a lot more likely to do it, but it really prevents you from finding even B-level talent in free agency at other spots if you make this type of investment at this position. And it's a non-premium position. It's not a pass rusher. It's not a quarterback, and it's not a big-time one-of-a-kind skill position type guy. It's really tough to make this investment, and he's getting the money too. I mean, he's better than Tremaine Edmonds, who got paid $18 million a year a couple of years ago in free agency. So he's going to get the money, and I don't believe the Texans should give it to him.
Yeah, and my thing is this with Patrick Queen. I like him a lot, but I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there for me. I think offensively, you can make a case that you're a player away, like a splash away. So if you wanted to sign like a Mike Evans, or you want and still be able to get a running back, I think you can do that. But on this defense, every single layer of your defense, you need more. You need more on the D line. You need more at linebacker. You need more, maybe even at safety. We haven't even really entertained that.
Well, you need depth.
Cornerback. Yeah. So it's not like hey, if we bring in Mike Evans and then we sign a linebacker, we feel like you're ready to have a top 5, top 10 offense. It just feels like there's so much more work to be done on defense. And if you're investing this much money on an awesome player, we both agree he's awesome. But if you're investing this much money, it, in the long scheme of things, can kind of prevent you from getting to where you want to go. The other element is, though, there are guys that their arrow is pointing up, and they could be just like on the cusp of becoming elite in Will Anderson, maybe Christian Harris, and Derek Stingley. So there's some optimism there. But for me, the verdict, I'm going to go no. And it's just because you have so many more needs on defense. You're drafting in an area where I think you can find a linebacker, and you can spend the premium bread on more premium positions.
I mean, DeMeco Ryans took Blake Cashman, who was basically a special teams ace, and turned him into a worthwhile starter at linebacker. Think about if you did a middling investment at linebacker and DeMeco Ryans was able to get his hands on one of those guys. Or, I don't know, you spend on a less expensive guy who's familiar with DeMeco Ryans, like Al-Shazir, who's in free agency. So, or Elise Al-Shazir. You could spend on a different linebacker in free agency. You could draft a guy like you said. You can do a lot of different things besides Patrick Queen, who's a really good player. Someone's going to get a really good player, but it shouldn't be on the Texans.
Yeah, DeMeco's going to fall in love with someone. Don't know if it's going to be Patrick Queen. Should it be sure to subscribe to the Locker Room, subscribe to Cody Stoots' channel, and subscribe to Houston Football. It's worth every penny. I'm not just saying that because he's right here, because he knows damn well if I didn't think it was, I damn sure wouldn't say it. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Tomorrow we're going to get to Josh Jacobs. We're going to go back to the running backs. It's franchise tag time, though, so you can get that kick to the junk very quickly, depending on what the Raiders do. Appreciate you for coming through. Sign or decline Patrick Queen. Let me know what you think. Thanks for coming through.